This is the Energizing India podcast.
Welcome to the Energizing India podcast. 5 years ago, EV charging in India was a promise. Today, it's a battlefield. Billions of dollars committed, networks being built at speed, and yet range anxiety, broken chargers, and questions on profitability still linger. The hype phase is over, and this is now about execution, resilience, and who actually survives the decade. My guest today isn't theorizing about this transition, he's actually building it, brick by brick, charger by charger. For the third time on the Energizing India podcast, I am joined by Kartikeya HARIYANI, founder and CEO of Chargezone, one of India's largest independent EV charging networks, taking on giants and redefining what scale looks like in this space of clean mobility in India. Kartikeya, welcome back to the program. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you, Ravin. It's always a pleasure being here, and thank you for hosting me here.
Kartikeya, 5 years ago, the EV charging sector in India was a land grab. It was about who's going to build the fastest and biggest network in India. Today, on the flip side, 6 years later, it seems like an execution grind. It's mostly about reliability, about charger availability, uptime. I'm interested from your perspective, with all your experience, what is the biggest misconception about this sector that people who are not operators such as yourself are not aware of?
Well, the biggest misconception has been whether a CPU or a charging company, whether it's all about a network. The answer is no. We have seen some of the players, global players, who started, say, as early as 2012, 2013, almost 13, 14 years ago, in the US or Europe. And they raised capital. They did put in a lot of charging points early in the journey. So there were obviously mistakes being made. AC chargers or slow chargers, as we call it, DC chargers, fast chargers. And the idea was, probably the idea to success was, well, our strength is largely going to be the network. And if the network is bigger, we'll become bigger. Well, that misconception has been entirely wrong, because the business model is not about the network's strength or the strength of the network alone, but it is all about how much of energy that you sell every day. Yeah. So you may be 10x in terms of selling energy with half the size of the network, or 1/3, just because you are focusing on superchargers. You're focusing on other upstream integration on renewable energy, on battery storage and everything. So that myth that bigger the better has completely been proven wrong.
Interesting. So I'll come at that question from a different angle, Kartikeya. So bigger is not better is the myth. That's true. When we started down this journey in 2021, both of us started at the same time. 60 kilowatt chargers were considered to be, a high-powered charger. It was considered to be a fast charger, and you were the pioneer because you took 60 kilowatt chargers that could be upgraded to 120. Here we are in 2026, and now you're not even looking at that because you're already moved to 180, 240, 360, 480, even a megawatt charger. That 5-year journey, what has been your biggest learning as a company at Chargezone?
So the learning has been that while it's about the strength of the network, it's all about reliability, uptime, location partnerships, and so on. But I must say one thing, that there are multiple elements that makes a CPU a success. At Chargezone, very early we realized in our journey that we'll be focusing largely on enabling intercity mobility or e-mobility for intercity travel, whether it's for personal mobility or for commercial ones. And very quickly we realized that it's all going to be a playbook of superchargers. So there are ultra fast chargers, there are superchargers, there are all kind of category of chargers that we know. Surely there are 60 kilowatt, 120 kilowatt, because India is a market of small cars as well. But as we know that even 60 kilowatt single gun is now a baseline, right? And no longer a single charging station anymore. And therefore, for us at Chargezone, we took a multi-pronged approach. Multiple partners across technology, across real estate, across OEMs, across automobile, and obviously the e-mobility partnerships, which has brought us to a level where Apart from the network, it's also how much of megawatt strength that you have in the network. So today we have 104 megawatt of network running with uptime of as high as 97%. Now, this has happened over the period of 4 years. Now, let me give another data point. Is what we did in last 4 years is what we are going to do this year. It is 4x the effort. It's 4x the capital. 4x, luckily not the resources, but 4x more efforts in terms of planning and building partnerships, which will take Chargezone to the next level in terms of capacity built out and set the tone for the current decade, I would say, from 2026 to 2030. This entire 10-year journey, which is going to be a journey of electrification, propelled by the recent turn of events globally, including the Iran war, which has now set electrification as a top priority across the industry, regulators, and government as a stakeholder.
One more question on Chargezone and the performance of Chargezone before we move on to exactly what you've talked about Iran and what it's going to do for India. Every CEO, such as yourselves, will always have to make 3 to 5 year looking forward plans, right? So I'm sure you've got a 2030 plan, but I want to take you back to 2021 and look at the plan that you made for 2026. How far ahead of what you anticipated you would achieve have you actually got to?
So I must say one thing, Ravin. Probably it could have been better. Let's put it that way. You see China. And I will also highlight one thing, that there's some article which mentioned that world is going electric without America. Yeah, yeah. And what does it mean? That while mobility sector has always been seen or viewed from the lens of United States, I think it has changed a lot. For the last 3 years, just 3 years, it has changed that people are looking automotive industry from the lens of China. Now, China, 30 million electric cars on the road. Every second car sold, a new car sold in China is an electric.
Electric, yeah.
And they are packed with higher capacity batteries, better range. And well, there are millions of charging points in China. Now, the question is, why a country like India, which is amongst the top 3, top 4 automotive market in the world, why we couldn't do I mean, what literally paused us or stopped us doing that? Well, neither of it. It was only an intent. The government had actually put down the policies that rolled down all the policy measures for the industry to adopt e-mobility. But I guess collectively we were very, very slow as a market and as industry players as well. However, better late than never. Today, wherever we are, I thought we could have been a year ago. So technically, we are already late as a company as Chargezone. I believe that we are late in journey. We grew to a revenue scale of roughly 125 crores as we speak. We are already on an ARR of roughly 250 crores already, which also means that from the 2x growth from last year, we are seeing another 2 to 3x growth for this year, and so on and so forth. So I would say, Ravin, is it will be not very prudent to look backwards. It's important to look forward and connect the dots. Looking forward now is that now that electrification is here to stay, as Chargezone, our entire stack, we call it an energy stack, which includes infra, technology, capital, and of course other formative elements like renewable energy and other ancillary infrastructure that you need. What can we do more? How we can do better? How we can improve the experience, not only for a Mercedes owner, but also for a Tata Punch owner, or for that matter, a truck driver, an electric truck driver, electric bus driver. So for us, we are looking as Chargezone only one focused initiative and outcome, therefore, is how do we improve an EV charging experience through a new supercharging network initiative we started a year ago, and how many X thousand chargers that you can deploy over the next 3 to 4 years.
So, Kartikeya, talking about the network, one of the bugbears of networks across the world, but particularly in India, is utilization. We have one element to the utilization, and that across your network and across every network in India, 10% of chargers outside of the metropolitan locations are not working because of electricity unavailability. But we'll park that. The reality is demand is also low. And so, whenever I've spoken to funds, They've always been very keen to fund a bus depot, but not really B2C charging, where customers are coming on highways. How does Chargezone make its own B2C network viable?
So, now let me come to the favorite tagline I heard recently, that the partnership is the new leadership. And unknowingly, Ravin, also with you as well as with other stakeholders in the industry, unconsciously, we actually built out one. A leadership in terms of how a world-class EV charging network can be built in a difficult market like India. And it's difficult not in terms of infrastructure only, but also in terms of environment. We have a far more sunnier environment, dusty as well, and the working conditions are extremely difficult. However, having said that, when we look at the B2C network or B2B, today as Chargezone, we no longer differentiate it at all. We have taken a bit of pause. This was the beginning of last year when we realized that the e-mobility customers weren't able to scale. And today, I think the scenario is changing very, very quickly. But a year ago, it was extremely difficult. We had sufficient capital in the bank, but yet we found very limited opportunities in, say, captive hubs, for example. Also, a year ago, there were very less electric car models or commercial buses or commercial EV trucks model. Today, practically every OEM has at least 2 electric vehicle models available in the market, at least 2. Yeah. So I think it's a great outcome over the last 12 months. But a year before and year today, as Chargezone, we realized that our charging network is no longer a B2B or B2C. It's an open access. And therefore, our charging station on a highway or on a city is open to all kind of vehicles as long as it is car, buses or trucks. And I think that approach has really helped us to scale up the utilization. And over the last 12 months, we've been growing on an average 8% every month on month. And I think this has been, as I said earlier, it's an outcome of multiple factors which constitutes this business in terms of seamless operations and seamless experience to the EV drivers or EV owners. But a very simple strategy that our charging network, our charging station, or a charging network, or a charging hub is open to all kind of vehicles. And I think this has really helped us to address both the B2B and B2C opportunities.
So I'm going to come to another bugbear of the industry, and it's a question I've asked you every time you've come on the show, and that is the split of the industry today. On one side, we have the oligarchs, the big family companies that manage most of India, and on the other side, you have the PSUs who've also invested, but whose networks don't work. And then in the middle, you have what used to be independent charge point operators, but there's been a clear separation now because Chargezone's the biggest, and then you have a host of other independent charge point operators. How do you see this industry evolving? Do you see some level of consolidation? Do you see it ending up with 4 or 5 players, or 4 plus Chargezone? How do you see the industry evolving?
I think the industry will quickly evolve into a consolidated space sooner than later. I would say it's difficult to ascertain the timeline for this, but EV charging is hugely a capex play, is a real estate play, is an infra play, and above all, it's an energy play. Technology is a commodity at the end of the day, because customers don't care. Customers, he or she just simply wants a reliable charging at a competitive price. Yeah, it does not matter whether they pay through Google Pay or Paytm or anything. They simply say, I just need a reliable EV charging. Now, having said that, today there is already a huge amount of interest from the pockets of climate capital, decarbonization funds, and so on. But those capital are also pretty limited in terms of size. Though we have decided to take a very, very clear organic approach. And along the way, we did acquire some small-time CPOs as well, assets of some small-time CPOs, I mean. But we have always evolved as a company in terms of raising the right mix of equity and debt and scaling the business forward. But now let me highlight one important thing. Recently, we just did a little PR on our franchisee program. Now, this program is what we call as a DOCO program, is nothing but the access to capital that we have amongst our fellow Indians. So to give a data point, it may not be as accurate, but post-COVID, we have seen an acceleration in terms of number of gas stations or petrol pumps in the country, moving from 65,000 to 100,000. So these 30 to 40,000 petrol pumps have come up in the last 4 to 5 years with an average ticket size of 2 to 3 crore per per gas station or petrol pump, which means that there has been 100,000 crores has come into the system from fellow Indians, means the small and mid-sized entrepreneurs who have invested into this. And this struck us an idea, an opportunity. Why not access? Why not access them as well? And therefore, our DOCO program, which launched 3 years ago, it actually found a new vigor, a new life when we partnered with SBI, State Bank of India, for their EV Mitra policy. Now, under EV Mitra scheme, an individual can access anything from 10 lakhs to 10 crores in terms of debt, and therefore can create a partnership with Chargezone under franchise scheme or a DOCO scheme for setting up a supercharging station. And therefore, we see this momentum growing, momentum leading rather to an expansion of the charging stations. And I think this can be done not just, as I said, the capital obviously is the key, but also just continue to create and nurture meaningful partnerships with both e-mobility customers, the EV community as a whole, and of course the auto OEMs.
So, given the journey 21 to 2026, there were so many gaps when we started in 2021. Access to financing for vehicles was a problem. Access to quality infrastructure at the right cost was an issue. Networks was an issue. Electricity was an issue. We're so mature today. Like in the conversation we've had before, one of the learnings I told you was that if you were to remove the Scandics in China, India actually leads the pack in electrification, even though we don't give ourselves the credit for having achieved that.
Absolutely, yes.
What are the gaps that you're still seeing in the Indian ecosystem?
I think the gap. So let me highlight one thing. Thanks, Ravin, for pointing that out. If you see the entire EV market globally, you remove China and the Scandi region and Tesla, the India is actually one of the leading market in terms of adopting e-mobility. Now, let me put it this way. Until now, Ravin, we spoke, not just me, many of thought leaders in the industry did speak about clean mobility, zero carbon emissions or net zero, etc. And on few occasions, I personally did mention that this needs to be looked upon as a energy security initiative and not just an alternative clean mobility mission. Well, last 30 to 40 days, things have changed, world has changed, and things have changed within India. And as we now know and understand that government has taken electrification as a super priority, along with other affiliated initiatives such as renewable energy and all, including storage. So if we look at the electrification for India, it's now a must-do thing. It is not an alternative anymore. You may call it an alternate energy movement, but in a micro level or strategic terms, it is definitely or no longer an alternate by itself. It is a must-do thing for the country, for the economy, in terms of national energy security. Well, despite knowing all this, I think the push needs to come now from the government that beyond policy measures, there need to be an obligatory initiative. Just it happened in renewable energy 10 years ago. The government came up with RPO, the Renewable Purchase Obligation. And e-mobility as an adoption as an obligation is a must-do thing right now and needs to be a topmost priority for the national government as we speak. From the industry point of view, the adoption of e-mobility now is at par with conventional diesel in terms of TCO, which means that the market has suddenly opened up big time in terms of when I can get an electric trucks or electric buses for our employees and so on. So now that narrative has changed from from a theory to a practical adoption. Now, as far as the scale up is concerned, I think the commitment to capex by the industry operators, whether it's contracts, whether putting the capital together with their partners and so on, I think the need of an hour is an access to capital, a meaningful capital to all forms of e-mobility ecosystem. And it is not just e-mobility, fleet operators or charging infra, it is also component manufacturing as well. And I think this, with this push by the government in terms of obligations, and secondly, industry committing big in terms of electrification, will lead to the opportunity getting unlocked, and millions of jobs, billions of clean energy kilometers will be delivered by this e-mobility sector, which a country needs very badly.
Clearly, we're both very excited about the journey from here to 2030. It's great to hear that you're going to go 4x of what you've done from your start to today. You did mention China, and I want to go back there for a second. 30 million vehicles in China that you mentioned that are electric, right? Now, if you were to look at the Indian statistics, we have 350 million vehicles registered on the road. 82% are two-wheelers and three-wheelers, 12% are trucks and buses, so it's only 6% that are actually cars. So, in a sense, we've got less than 30 million cars on the road in India today. And you've just said the statistic is in China, they have 30 million electric vehicles. So clearly they have got something right in terms of clean energy. We saw it because we've been in this space since 2010, and we saw in 2013 that China was moving very quickly to lithium. They have lots of policy advantages. We've been to most of the companies there that make EV chargers or batteries, and we've seen the sorts of advantages they have Indian companies will never have in terms of economies of scale. Yet, our challenge is to be present in the market at the price point that competes against China. From your perspective, because you're so entrenched in the clean mobility space, what did they get right that India still has to learn?
I think Chinese e-mobility story started in mid-90s. Yeah, probably they saw a lot of things ahead of the curve, which we as a country couldn't. Yeah. Now, and the journey was very, very similar. Very predictive one, I would say. Yeah, it started with two-wheelers and three-wheelers. They had actually e-rickshaws in Beijing when I made my first visit in China somewhere in 2001, 2002. And same story did played out of smog, polluted air in Beijing, the capital city in China. And they started a mission 30 years ago. They also took an integrated approach to the system, which is largely missing in many other countries around the world, including India, Europe, US. They took an integrated approach in terms of starting with better highways. Therefore, it created a very massive automotive ecosystem, both in terms of petrol, diesel, gasoline, However, in e-mobility, they opened up the wallets. Government opened up the wallets of hundreds of billions of dollars of subsidy to begin with. Now, subsidy, is it a bad word? Is it a good word? So let me give another stat. Now, as you know, I co-founded Billion Electric with the idea of electric trucks on the road. And I was just preparing a small balance sheet around the crude oil imports in the country. Whatever we are importing, roughly $250 billion worth of crude oil every year. And India buys 1 million trucks every year. There are almost 8 to 9 million trucks on the road right now, and 1 million trucks gets added every year. These trucks are ranging from 1 tonner to as high as 55 tonners. Now, if I were a treasurer of our country, and here is a stat that if in 10 years' time, if India has just 1 million electric trucks, and if as a treasurer, if I am going to allocate 10 to 15 lakh rupees as a one-time subsidy to purchase an electric truck, it will constitute to roughly $15 billion out of my treasury to the market. In exchange, I will be saving $75 billion of crude oil as net imports. Well, what can be a better ROI on a $15 billion investment, one-time subsidy to for electric trucks in my country, versus $75 billion of saving every year, recurring, at least for the next 15, 20 years, compared to the life of the truck that you are serving. Now, what can be better ROI of any investment of any business in the world? Now, this solves partly, to some extent, on this stats actually, this data point solves energy security to some extent. I would also like to believe that if tomorrow there's something goes wrong and it lasted for 60 days, we ran out of oil, I will still have 1 million trucks, let's say 10% of truck population, still serving. If the country goes under lockdown, this 10% of trucks will still serve medicines, groceries, milk, LPG cylinders, if at all they are there, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm sure there are several advisors at a national level in Delhi who are working on this idea, I'm sure. But have we taken this as a collective approach? 1 million trucks means we are talking about 15 billion is a subsidy. So it's actually 6 times over. So we are talking about $100 billion worth of industry you are creating with just 1 million trucks. I'm saying just because it is constituting only 10% of the population of trucks. So $100 billion, which means capital, which means the industry has to produce $100 billion worth of trucks. So it means supply chain of maybe 75, $80 billion worth of component manufacturing, including battery manufacturing and so on and so forth. So you got to zoom out a bit. And when you see this under maybe a ball of crystal, for example, a magical one, which is no longer magical, it's actually a very common sense, that by pouring just $15 billion kickstarts a $100 billion industry. Yeah, and I've just spoken about trucks only. Just extrapolate to buses, also two-wheelers, three-wheelers, which I think government has done a bit, and city buses as well. You are looking at easily anything between $300 to $400 billion worth of industry, a new economy parallel that you are kickstarting, which will last for decades now.
So those numbers that you've just given us is astounding. It's a slam dunk. To use an American terminology, have you gone and spoken to the finance minister on this, or do you plan to do that?
Yeah, I've given the inputs to MHI. Yeah, we had a little chat. I'm sure through this podcast, Ravin, we also request you if you want to put in a word to the finance minister himself, as well as the Ministry of Power and other related ministries. But for years, as here in Delhi, fortunately, we have one common agency, as Niti Aayog. And Niti Aayog is the one who actually has an ability to think at a scale and can run all kind of forecasts that it needs to do, engages various thought leaders in the industry, both on the government and the industry side, and they can actually come up with a blueprint, which country needs badly, and right now we need one. And this is exactly what China did 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and this is the reason where they are today. They too are dependent upon shock. We have dependency, let's say up to 85% of our energy needs are still imported. China is not very far behind. They are still at 73%. But they were able to absorb that shock because of an electrification that they commenced 30 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is renewable energy as well as e-mobility.
So Kartikeya, you talked about wanting to be forward-looking. So I'm going to take you to 2030 and talk about how do you see the landscape? What is the technology changes that have happened in terms of clean mobility between now and then? Because 21 to 2026, such a major change. I wouldn't have thought we'd have gotten this far. So what are you going to see in technology and any other evolution between now and 2030?
I think at the end of the day, if you look at the skateboard, if you look at a vehicle skateboard, the skeleton, the architecture is pretty much standardized. Yeah, right. Now the question is the C rating of the battery. Maybe if BYD claims that yes, I can charge in 5 minutes as good as time to refill my car with petrol or diesel, they bought electric car at the same scales. But if you really see, the change is nothing to do with the car itself, but a C rating of the battery, and therefore anything that is on board in terms of electrification as well as off-board in terms of charging infrastructure, but everything else remains the same. Now, if you look at the commercial mobility, it doesn't require a 5C, 10C rated batteries anymore, because the entire logistics work or even the passenger transportation through electric buses, they require maybe 1.5. We only need some incremental, which is already there, which is already available. And at large, the industry has standardized a lot of things in terms of charging infrastructure, the CCS2 connector, the voltage rating on the architecture. It's all standardized. We don't need anything more than that. Of course, there will be innovation, incremental innovation or dramatic innovation, I would say, in terms of better interiors, in terms of a better infotainment system and so on. But those are just good to have items, not need to have one. I need to have one. I think it's already very well established.
Kartikeya, you have had an immense amount of success in raising capital for Chargezone. It's usually for founders, it's a stress point because most founders want to create and build things. I'm interested in two questions here. One is, what is the secret to the success of Chargezone in being able to get access to capital as successfully as you've done it? And secondly, for the young entrepreneurs who listen to the show, how much time of yours as a CEO spent on the fundraise versus managing the business?
So Ravin, if you really see fundraise for capital is an enabler, and it's one of the. It depends upon what business you are in and what business model it is, isn't it? Now over the last 4 years, most of our charging stations were COCO in nature, Chargezone owned and operated. It means we did roughly a capex of $50 million so far, which is a mix of equity and debt. And if you look at the fundraise part, it's always splitted between equity and debt, and both are two different sources of capital, have two different approaches. Debt can come if your business is bankable. Debt can come only if your business is profitable, and so on. It means classical danda, right? It's business as usual. If you do it, debt comes and debt follows. Now, fortunately, Indian banks, traditional banks, have started opening up the wallets big time. And I think this is a welcome move as the government has nudged the bankers to start looking into EV ecosystem. And now you see more of traditional capital, which is at extremely competitive interest rates. It is just slightly below 10% that you are able to avail. I'm expecting it to go even a little lower than this, but it is at an extremely competitive level that you can get access to that. Now, this is only possible when you have done the business right, when you have cash flows, cash register running on a daily basis. On the other side, equity. I think it's a process by itself. And I must say there is a capital available in various forms in various pockets in the world. And for me, it's been a steep learning curve over just last 2.5 years. I never knew anything about how to raise capital from private equity or institutional capital prior to 3 years ago. But I must say that if you've done a few things right, you're starting with business model, and even I've personally undergone a huge lesson on better governance, compliances. So when you start putting those controls in place, you prepare your organization like anybody, like dressing up for an occasion. And if occasion is a fundraise, then you got to really dress up right in terms of your processes, methodologies, compliance, but above all, business model. So nothing can be overrated or underrated in this process. But I must say that if you've done few things right, I think capital is right there. And last but not least on this topic, it is all about timing and a market readiness. And if you talk about EV mobility, well, 2025 has changed everything about e-mobility in the country, which never happened over the previous 10 years. Yeah.
So how much of your time do you actually spend on the fundraising aspect versus managing the business?
Yeah, I think fortunately it is not more than 3%. We have a very strong team, including my CFO, Manish Madhukariya, and a very strong CXO team that we have built over a period of time. So it's all about running a process where you hire the best of the industrial bankers who can be your advisor. But things becomes relatively easier when you are demonstrated results and success. So it kind of
it's a snowball that feeds itself.
Yeah, absolutely. However, my time goes in actual selling, leading some of our business development actions, along with a very strong team of almost 12 people we have in franchise program, and that's actually another capital that is coming in now. Yeah, and this year we foresee at least 50 to 60% of our charges funded through franchise program as well.
We've often talked about range anxiety, and you've really well mentioned maybe a year ago that range anxiety is actually moved to charge anxiety. And to explain it differently, 5 years ago people were worried about accessing chargers, and today they're worried about accessing a charger that is reliable, landing up at a place where it's not working. What is your biggest challenge in reliability today in your network?
I think the challenge is largely attributed to power grid failure, which needs to be solved or is being solved at our end through battery energy storage integration, through EMS, CMS, and so on. So that's one major thing that we are solving. Other things are kind of run-of-the-mill types. It could be related to a hardware fault or a GSM network availability, but those ones are less than 20% of the challenge. 80% challenge is still going to be a power grid reliability.
Yeah. Maybe a question about Chargezone then, Kartikeya. You're the founder. Your journey's been really inspirational to watch, from where you started in 2020 with a dream and an idea and repeated execution over every 365 days to today. I'm interested and I'll put this question in two parts, Kartikeya. The first one is, what really excites you now at this point about building the future of Chargezone? So that's the yin question. The yang question is, what keeps you awake at night, genuinely, about the future of Chargezone also?
So I think if we, as an electrical engineer and also as a student of electromagnetics, which is been my favorite subject, combined with physics and maths, has always been what could have electrified more and find alternative to the traditional fossil fuel based initiatives. And I'm glad that that's the kick I get in the morning until evening and midnight, and again next day morning, is all about electrification. So it's like, all day I dream is about sports, right? That's Adidas, right? So for me, it's all day I dream is all about electrification or e-mobility. And this excitement is driven by stakeholder partnerships. Automobile also is my second favorite, I would say, after electromagnetics. And therefore, it's a beautiful intersection of mobility, electricity, energy, as we say, and technology. And I think with this combination, it's extremely motivating, to keep working in this direction without getting tired.
Kartikeya, what an interesting conversation. Thank you so much for having made the time to be with us on the Energizing India podcast. Good luck for the business, and we look forward to having you back on the show yet one more time in the near future.
Thank you very much.